Eddie Hearn is saying that if Anthony Joshua defeats Andy Ruiz in the rematch, he'll be more popular than he was before he lost. I think that's wishful thinking. I think that Eddie Hearn is praying that this is all a nightmare and that he's going to wake up and realize it was all just a bad dream and breathe a huge sigh of relief. He's obviously hoping that AJ goes and beats Ruiz and that he'll just resume business as usual for Matchroom and AJ. I seriously doubt it. I think that from this moment on, irrespective of whether AJ beats Ruiz in the rematch, things will never be the same for AJ again. I think the days of him being universally adored by the British media, being this mainstream celebrity who was on all the billboards and placed up on this very high pedestal, afternoon tea with the Queen, selling out Wembley Stadium against anybody. Those days are done. Those days are over. They're gone forever. I'm not saying, and the reason I have to clarify a few things here is because I have been having this discussion in my Facebook boxing group, Hatman Boxing. But I'm not saying that Anthony Joshua ain't going to fill out a stadium ever again in his career. That's not what I'm saying. But in the words of John Fury, a year or so ago, John Fury said, Anthony Joshua could fight a dog in the road and sell out Wembley. You understand? He could literally fight me and sell out Wembley before the Ruiz fight. Those days are done. Moving forward, AJ is going to have to fight people who the British public know, like a Tyson Fury or a Deontay Wilder, maybe a Dylan White, possibly. All right, that's, I would say, a bit more difficult, but possibly Dylan White too. And of course, the Ruiz rematch, because there's a big storyline there, a redemption storyline. But outside of the big fighters who the British public are very familiar with, the casuals, etc., they're familiar with, outside of that, AJ's not going to be selling out big stadiums anymore. I just don't see it. I think his bubble has been burst. And at the second phase of AJ's career, if he even manages to beat Ruiz, because everybody's assuming he's just going to beat Ruiz in the rematch, that's not a foregone conclusion. You made that mistake first time around. So if, and it's a big if, he beats Ruiz in the rematch, his aura of invincibility, which he had in the minds of so many of his fans, that aura of invincibility is gone for good. A lot of people already have turned their back on AJ and said, you know what? How can he get beat by this fat guy? They're thinking that they've been living in a dream world all along and believing in a fantasy and believing in a fraud. That's what a lot of people are waking up thinking now. And no matter how much success AJ has, he will never live down that first Andy Ruiz defeat. You know, people have brought up examples of Muhammad Ali being more popular after defeat, Mike Tyson being more popular after defeat, Ricky Hatton being still popular after defeat, Frank Bruno being more popular after defeat. The world is a different place now than it was when Muhammad Ali was fighting. Muhammad Ali was so much more than a heavyweight champion. He was a civil rights activist. He was a very outspoken anti-establishment figure, Muhammad Ali. He had people supporting him for far, far deeper and greater reasons than just being a world champion boxer. It was a totally different time. Do not expect Anthony Joshua to be able to emulate a Muhammad Ali in terms of what he meant to people beyond boxing. That's not what AJ or any of these guys at the moment are going to be able to do. Different time, different circumstances, different situation. Ali's journey and his struggle was very different to AJ's. AJ's is not as deep. Mike Tyson, you know, when Tyson lost to Buster Douglas, it was such an enormous shock because Tyson hadn't shown any weakness. And I'm talking about he hadn't been dropped. He hadn't been seriously hurt in a fight. He'd never been through a crisis. prior to fighting Buster Douglas. Yeah, he'd been, rocked briefly in a couple fights, like against Frank Bruno, briefly against Bone Crusher Smith in the 12th round. But he was seen as the Iron Man. They used to call him Iron Mike Tyson. There were people around at the time who were saying that Mike Tyson is invincible in hand-to-hand combat, that he can beat any man alive in or out of the ring. This was the attitude of a lot of people. I remember Vinnie Jones. And this was after, Tyson lost to Douglas, and I think when he came out of prison and beat Frank Bruno, Vinnie Jones was saying that Mike Tyson is the hardest man in the world. Like, I'm telling you, that was not a rare thing to hear people say that Tyson is invincible in hand-to-hand combat. So the mystique that Tyson had around him was way beyond what Anthony Joshua has. And because it was way beyond the mystique that, Joshua has in terms of invincibility, people still bought into the Tyson mystique. People felt like Tyson was the baddest man on the planet. He came up with that particular phrase, baddest man on the planet, and people really bought into that. It wasn't just that Mike Tyson was a great boxer. He was a bad dude. Do you understand? Like, he was the ultimate bad man. That's how a lot of people viewed him, as a street guy. And people believed, particularly back then, that being a real rough guy from the street gives you a massive advantage over people who are not from that kind of background. It held this real deep weight to it. Mike Tyson being this street guy, from Brownsville and all this kind of business, been in prison and bad boy, and he don't take nothing from no one, and he'll smack you up even outside the ring. Tyson had that. Anthony Joshua ain't got that. Anthony Joshua comes across as corporate. Do you understand? And corporate is, how can I describe it? Corporate is like transient. It's expendable. It's like fast food. That's how corporate is compared to the way Tyson was, or compared to how Ali was, who was fighting for a deeper cause. Do you understand? So these are not examples that I can say, oh yeah, well, AJ is going to emulate that. No, I don't see it. Ricky Hatton got beat by Mayweather and Pacquiao. Well, Ricky Hatton wasn't as popular after he got beaten by Mayweather and Pacquiao. No, he wasn't. He was more popular before those defeats. Frank Bruno was popular, but again, that was a different time. Frank Bruno existed at a time when Britain was, doing terribly when it came to world heavyweight champions. Lennox Lewis became the first world heavyweight champion from Britain since Bob Fitzsimmons in 1897, when Lewis became WBC champion, and I think, was it 93 when he got the belt from Riddick Bowe? When Bowe put it in the trash. So between 1897 and 1993, that's how long there was an absence of a British world heavyweight champion. So Frank Bruno, prior to that, was loved by the British people for so long because he was the best hope that Britain had of breaking that drought of world heavyweight champions, of breaking the American monopoly. So no matter how many times he lost, Britain kept on believing and kept on believing and kept on believing. All their hopes were pinned onto the one man. AJ's not in that situation. AJ's already been world heavyweight champion. The British public have already seen that story. And furthermore, he's not the only one in Britain who's world level. Well, you got Tyson Fury, the Gypsy King, who's been world heavyweight champion, who many people believe beat Deontay Wilder. You got Dylan White, who's world level, number one ranked contender in many sanctioning bodies. You got young guys like Daniel Dubois coming up. You got Joe Joyce. The heavyweight division in Britain is way more stacked today than it was during the times of Frank Bruno. So AJ's got a lot more competition even domestically in terms of competing for the adoration of the British public. Bruno had a virtual monopoly in Britain in terms of, getting the public adoration and the media adoration. When it came to heavyweights, he had pretty much a monopoly until Lennox Lewis came along. That's why him and Lewis had the rivalry, because Bruno was kind of envious of the fact that, Lewis is coming along and stealing or trying to encroach upon his limelight. But even when Frank Bruno and Lennox Lewis fought, let me show you this. Even when Frank Bruno and Lennox Lewis fought, they fought at Cardiff Arms Park in, was it 1994? I forget the exact year now. Was it 95, 94? I think it was 94. All right, it was between 93 and 95. But they fought at Cardiff Arms Park. And the attendance was something like 20 odd thousand or 30 odd thousand. That's all it was. They weren't selling no 90,000s or nothing like that. Not even close. And on top of all that, I feel like, and somebody did mention this, and I've mentioned this before, on the thread in my Facebook boxing group, somebody already mentioned that the attendances for AJ's stadium fights were dwindling even before he lost to Andy Ruiz. And that's true. Something I've mentioned. And in fact, I mentioned this, I think it was after the Takam fight. I said, I don't think AJ can go on filling out these stadiums for too much longer. I think the British public are going to get a bit tired of it because we've seen it all before. And I think I even said that the stadium fights are a little bit of a gimmick at this point. Because if you're sitting all the way in the back of a stadium, you're going to have to watch the fight with binoculars, even if you're looking at one of them big screens. So it's a little bit of a gimmick, and there's only so many people that are going to want to go to one of these stadium fights. And once the same fans have been recycled through those stadium fights a few times, they're going to get, a little tired of the gimmick, and the attendance figures are going to start dropping. So that's what I see happening. I don't think AJ is going to be looked at in the same way by the British public after this Ruiz rematch, win or lose. I think the days of him fighting a dog in the road and filling out Wembley, they're gone. And that's not to say he wasn't fighting quality fighters. He was, but the British public didn't know them. So the days of him fighting people the British public don't know and still packing out Wembley, I think them days are gone. For good. Yeah. If he does fill out stadiums, it's going to be against people the British public know well, or at least know pretty well, where there's some kind of narrative attached to it. So, yeah, that's what I think, man. And this next phase of Anthony Joshua's career is going to be more about Anthony Joshua, the fighter, rather than Anthony Joshua, the celebrity. He's going to have to grit down on his gum shield, and he's just going to be viewed as another fighter. He's not going to be viewed so much as this great celebrity. He's going to be viewed more as a fighter. And it'll be the making or the breaking of him. Because as Marvin Hagler once said, it's very hard to get up and go running at 4 a.m. in the morning when you're wearing silk pajamas. And Anthony Joshua in 23 fights has made himself a multi-millionaire. He's been to the very, very pinnacle of the sport and has done pretty much everything other than become undisputed. To climb back up to the top again when you've been knocked down is difficult when you've already been to the top. And he experienced a lot of pressure at the top, pressure which I don't think he necessarily enjoyed. I said in my post-fight video that it might sound strange, but I wouldn't be surprised if AJ is actually relieved in to a certain extent that he lost to Ruiz. Yeah, relieved. And no sooner had I said that Eddie Hearn came out in an interview a day later, or however it was, half a day later, and he said, I think AJ's actually a bit relieved because now the pressure's gone. So Hearn is confirming what I said in my post-fight video, that I bet AJ's a bit relieved because that's the amount of incredible pressure he was under. So how much motivation will he really have to get back up on top and be that celebrity again? Smiling and kissing babies and afternoon tea with the Queen and all that kind of business, game shows and posters and sponsorships. How much motivation will he have to be that guy again, knowing how much pressure comes with it? I wouldn't be surprised if you see a different attitude from AJ moving forward. A more fighter-like attitude where he kind of shuns the celebrity aspect a little bit and goes back to the Anthony Joshua of the old days. You know, like when he was coming out to Stormzy, fighting Dylan White, when he had that kind of swagger about him. I would not be surprised if that's the version of AJ that you see moving forward. Because that's the version of AJ it's going to take to come back from this. And I'm not talking about technically, I'm talking about mentality. Because that's before he'd made all the millions. That's when he was still hungry, you know? That's when he was mean in there. Remember that Dylan White fight? He was sticking his tongue out and he's like, come on then. Now, obviously, he nearly came apart in the Dylan White fight. But again, it's the mentality that he had. He didn't panic in the White fight when he got clipped. So, yeah, I think moving forward, it's going to be a very different kind of vibe to the whole AJ machine. It will be more back to basics. It will be more fight and boxing orientated and not so much of the celebrity stuff. His aura of invincibility is gone for good. He's going to be, I think, more business-like moving forward. Yeah. And as I say, those glory years where so many people felt like he was invincible, not me. I don't want to see no idiot, no imbecile, no liar in the comment section try to tell me, Hatman, that I thought that AJ was going to rule the division and beat everybody, because you're lying through your teeth, and you need to ask the deeper questions in life if you're coming out with rubbish like that. Like, why your mum and dad are brother and sister? Don't you even dare come to my channel lying through your teeth like that when I've been on here for years saying that AJ, Wilder and Fury are all going to take losses, and at least one, probably two of them are going to suffer a major upset defeat. I mean, even in the lead up to AJ versus Miller, when AJ versus Miller was first signed, I made a video in January where I said I would not be surprised if AJ loses this fight. It wouldn't shock me at all. Yeah. And when AJ versus Ruiz was made, I was like, look, it would not shock me if Ruiz wins this fight. I'm not picking him. Yeah. But it wouldn't shock me at all because Ruiz is dangerous. And, you know, if I was a betting man, I'd be very tempted to take the odds that they got on Ruiz. I said all this before the fight. All the people who were saying Ruiz ain't got no chance. He's a fat guy. This fight is a joke. I wasn't saying that. I was saying I would not be shocked if AJ lost this fight. Right? So, but for those AJ fans who believed that he was invincible, that he was just going to go on to beat everybody and nobody could touch him, they're never going to believe he's invincible ever again. This ain't a Mike Tyson. Yeah, Tyson had a different kind of mystique. AJ ain't got that. Do you know what I mean? And the British public have got options now. They got the Gypsy King, they got Dubois coming up, they got Joe Joyce, they got Dylan White. This ain't the 1980s, this ain't the 1990s. Like, we're in 2019. The game has changed, the world has changed, the division has changed. We live in a more expendable, disposable, transient society now. Where today you're hot, tomorrow you're not. Back in the days, it weren't so much like that, but today it is like that. You're hot today, tomorrow they've forgotten about you. You know, you just look at the world of music, how many one-hit, I mean, there's always been one-hit wonders, but now it's even worse than ever. It's like fast food music today, you know? You eat it, you forget about it. Same way with boxers, man. They're expendable like fast food. They're just like, well, whatever. It's all transient. It's all here today, gone tomorrow. On to the next hype train, on to the next trend. You know, I remember when I was growing up, the in crowd, and I'm talking about generationally, the in crowd was people like in their mid-20s, you know, maybe even late 20s. That was kind of the in crowd. But today, the in crowd is like people in their teens. Like now, youngsters see themselves as being part of the in generation, yeah, when they're in their teens. And by the time you get to 23, 24, they look at you and they say, oh, you're washed, man. You're old. That's where we're at in society. Yeah. It's that kind of world now. So yeah, in conclusion, I think Hearn is wishful thinking, as he should, because he has to think positive about the situation. But I just think those days are done, man. I think it's going to be a new chapter in AJ's career. And again, he can sell out stadiums in the future, but it'll only be for certain fights. He won't just be able to fight the Takams of the world and sell out, or the Povetkins. And again, these are good fighters, but the people, the British public, don't know. He won't be able to, have those fights on a regular basis and be selling out and making crazy purses. I just don't see it. I don't see it at all. And yeah, that's my take on it, people. Could I be wrong? Of course I could be wrong, but I'm going to trust my judgment. Do you know what I mean? Because I've been very good and very accurate when it comes to predicting the way this heavyweight era would unfold. So, I'm going to stick with my judgment on the way it's going to continue to unfold. Because I told you guys that one of these young heavyweights was going to beat Klitschko. I didn't tell you which one. I'm not going to lie. I didn't tell you it was definitely going to be, but I knew, and I know people say, well, that's obvious. No, it wasn't obvious at the time. Because most people on my videos were saying, I don't see it happen, man. I don't see any of these young guys beating Klitschko. That's what people were saying. And I was like, no. One of these guys is definitely going to beat him. Put your house on it. Happened. I was saying this is going to be a golden age of heavyweight boxing. And I was saying this long before, in fact, Fury became champion and all that kind of stuff. Long before that. I was saying it's going to be a golden age of heavyweight boxing that we're moving into. When AJ was fighting Dylan White and all that. Oh, come on, it's not no golden age. Well, here we are. And then after that, I was saying, we're going to see major upsets in the heavyweight division. None of these top three are going to go on to reign over the division and retire undefeated. That's not happening. There's going to be major upsets. And one of these guys, at least one of them, is going to lose to somebody who you would never imagine that he could possibly lose to. We've seen that already. And I'm telling you now, right now, another prediction. Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury, at least one of them is going to lose in another major upset. I'm telling you now, one of them is going to lose in a major upset to somebody you would never imagine they could lose to. That's going to happen. Bookmark this video right here, so that when it happens, you can come around and, remember what I said. And I know I'm banging on about what I said back in the days, this, that, and the other, but I just get tired of idiots coming on my channel saying, you never said that, you never said this, just admit you were wrong. Donuts like that. Yeah, Johnny come latelys. Who ain't been paying attention and listening to what I've been saying. So, I'm not trying to sound big-headed or arrogant. I've got plenty of predictions wrong. Just like you have, just like we all have. But I at least want credit for the ones I've got right. Do you know what I mean? And when it comes to the way this heavyweight era would unfold, I've been very accurate. Very accurate. So anyway, drop your comments below, people. Let me know how you feel about Eddie Hearn's comments. Will Anthony Joshua be bigger if he wins the Ruiz rematch than he was before? Or will it never quite be the same again? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.